better.
Ugh.
Find out more about the MRI. Hopefully this week. We were supposed to find out. Ace, my husband tore his hamstring, so we're trying to figure out if how he's doing. So.
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that. Those are rough injuries to go.
Okay, so we're recording. It's 5:30. It's funny because the recording piece of this just goes so against everything that I'm used to. So I kind of break out into a little cold sweat when I'm recording. Welcome everybody. I see we have quite a few people here. Susan, are you able to see who's online?
Yes, I am. And I'm taking your attendance for you.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I think I would make a
Hi there.
So welcome everybody. I would make a terrible teacher because I'm not good at like high school. Like I don't like the administrative stuff, right? I like to just get into the real nuts and bolts. So welcome. Did you guys do okay with the homework? Did everybody get the homework okay? Everybody has the book. Yes, no, maybe so. What do you guys think?
I got the book. It is incredible.
Okay.
I read it. I didn't get my book till Monday morning.
Okay.
And so I read nonstop. It is so much material, and there's so much that for me, it just made me start thinking and thinking. I had to put it aside and process what I'd read, go back and read it again, take notes, read some more. I felt convicted of things I've done wrong. And then just realizing so many different things about grief. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, that's great. What about you, Ace? Did you get your information and did you do your homework, young man?
Yes, I sure did. I emailed it to you.
I saw it.
My last night. Yeah. But yeah, I found the book, the ebook and the audiobook all on the Scribed app. So if anybody's looking there, so that's where I've been using both actually to listen to and also going back to read it and then do my homework. So that's where I found it if anyone else is looking for it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. What about you, Brenda?
I got my book on Saturday. I didn't see the homework until either Saturday or Sunday. So I have been on a fast track, as Susan was. And I know you noticed I didn't email it to you until early this morning. Yeah. But as far as the book is concerned, because I've been working as a lay counselor, there are some things that were very enlightening to me about how we handle grief. And as you will see in my notes, the things that I explained in there. But the book is very good. So far, so good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like it. We don't have to agree with all of it. There are some things that we would think differently about and stuff, but it kind of does help you like have a different perspective with respect to grief, and it broadens our understanding, I think. So yeah, it just kind of gives us more to chew on, and we don't have to accept everything, and that's okay. We're all, good.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was trying to read it with an open mind, not what I know, but just with an open mind, put everything else to the side.
Yeah, be teachable, right?
Exactly.
And that was really hard for me because as a therapist, right, I have all this other stuff that I had to fight against, in just receiving some new information and then filtering it. So. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Okay, Kimberly, I don't know you yet. Hi, I'm Kathy. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Kimberly. How are you?
Good. Nice to see a face.
Yes.
You
Nice
guys
to
are all
see
brave that put your video on.
I received my book yesterday. I ordered it on Amazon. I am halfway through it, so I will get it to you shortly. But so far, so good. I've been taking notes, and it's really interesting that I'm doing this class at this time because I'm a school counselor. So I recently, about a month ago, said I wanted to start a grief support group for the kids.
Awesome.
Because every time they come into the office, when we get down to like the nitty gritty of what's going on with them, there's unresolved anger because of a grief that they were not able to resolve. And when I was looking back at the video from you, you were talking about, kids and how they were not able to name their feelings and, things like that. And I did a mindful activity with them. And I was like, oh my God, this is all right on time, because there really is not a big support group for kids other than like a one-on-one, but they
Yes.
need a more in-depth grief deal. So I'm glad that I'm in this class so I can take some things back to them and hopefully pour into them what you're going to pour into me and what the book is going to pour in this whole thing that God is trying to do. Because after COVID, I just would have thought we would have been a little bit more intentional about those types of things with the kids, because we lost so many people during that time. So this is a very good time for me and what I'm wanting to do at the school. So I'm happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You just gave me chills. It was like, that is so awesome. I'm not kidding you, because it's such a burden of mine too, to get this information out. So if you need any help at all, Kimberly, please just text me or call me. And if I have a minute, I'll give you a call. I'm
Okay.
happy, I'll send you my slides, send the slides out. So I'm not the keeper of the gate of this information at all. I just try to organize it so it's easy for you guys to access and understand. So
Thank you.
that is awesome. They need you. That is so awesome. Awesome. Great. And also I want to encourage you too, like, even though this is about empowering you guys to learn how to lead groups and stuff, like, it's kind of a twofold thing where you get to actually do some of your own work. So it's kind of cool that you can do both. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. This is going to be a really interactive class today. So get ready, you guys. If anybody else can put their video on, that would be wonderful. Or I'm going to call on you guys. I see there's a Mary with us. Mary, are you with us?
Yes.
Hi, Mary.
I wasn't expecting to be on video.
Oh, that's okay. No judgment. I'm kind of a pinhead today because I was too lazy to do my hair. So,
Well, I joined the class late, so I haven't done homework. I did get the book a couple of days ago.
Okay,
so
good.
I will be doing homework.
Good.
I actually lost my husband to COVID 2 years ago. And so I have been grieving. And it occurred to me to tell one of my closest friends that I was taking this class. And he told me, why? You've passed it. You passed it.
Oh.
But I don't think, I'm doing better than when I first started, but I feel like I'm not grieving the right way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I guess I feel a little lost.
Yeah.
Like, what's next?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you know why you feel like it's not the right way? Like, in your mind, what is the right way?
Oh, I don't know. That's why I'm taking the class.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of that undefined piece, right?
Yes. I don't feel as lost as I was 6 months ago,
Yeah.
but I do feel a little lost. And I guess more in the sense, what's next?
Yes. This class will be very helpful for you. Thank you for honoring us, right? With your story. And some of us are going to talk about our story as well. And so hopefully you'll find comfort in knowing that you're not alone, for sure, right? But
Thank you.
Thank you for honoring us with your pain, right? Because it's very painful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I just want to say a word, you guys, about the homework, right? I told you I'm a terrible teacher because, you know, homework is beneficial to you because it helps you learn the process. But please don't ever feel like you can't come to our class if you don't do your homework, right? Please don't let that be a barrier. Grief is a really rough thing, and it takes a lot of our energy. And it takes a lot of our focus, and sometimes we can't even concentrate when we're grieving. So please give yourself grace and come anyway, even if you just listen, right? Because it's important for you guys. All right. Who else do we have with us that hasn't, who would like to talk? Anybody? Cheryl, are you with us?
Did you say Cheryl?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I am.
Put you on the spot. How are you doing? And tell me a little bit about like the process for you. And did you get the book okay? And
Yes, I received the book on Sunday. And hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl. So I did my homework, and the book is interesting. Some things I agree with, some things I was like, So, but however, just a little bit about myself. I lost my only child in 2014. On Thanksgiving night, my son was 18-wheeler hit him, and so he didn't make it. And then 4 years later, I lost my mother on Thanksgiving, well, the day after Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is a bit rough for me during that time. But after I lost my son, I would say maybe the next year or two, I thought about doing a grief support group. And so I knew, like, I started out with like 5 other ladies that I knew who also lost their kid. And my son was 19 when he passed away. And all these other ladies that I'm talking about, their kid was went to school with my son, and they were about the same age. But like a year later, they died like a year later, or a year to 2 later afterwards. So I reached out to those women, and they came to the house maybe once or twice. And so then I kind of just, left it alone. I said, if y'all want to, if we want to hold this group, I just wanted them to come to be able to just share and talk. Because for me, I think it's therapeutic for me to talk about my son and my mom. I could sit up and talk about my son and my mom all day, where some people can't. And it's interesting to know that how people grieve differently. Everybody grieve differently. My husband and I are in the same house. He can't hardly look, still now, he can't hardly look at the pictures of my son. But me, I can go on Facebook on his page and, all of that. So anyway, I decided a pastor that his church is across the street from mine, he lost his son last year. And he reached out to my husband, and they talked or whatever. And so my husband told him that, about the group that I tried to get together. And so he said, well, let's do something. So now we have got that group together, and it's called Lean on Me.
oh,
And so we've been, I want to say, we do it once a month. And so it'll be like the next, in February will be like my 5th meeting that we've had. And so ladies are coming and, talking and sharing, and it's people saying that they didn't have anybody to talk to because some of the family members tell them they should be over this by now and all of that. So it's beneficial. So I talked to my pastor about it, and I'm going to start school sometime this year. I'll be starting school. And I wanted to get my license in counseling. And
Very
so,
cool.
yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. My pastor told me about this group and this course. So that's why I reached out, and hopefully I'll get something out of it and I can take it back to the group.
Oh, Cheryl, that's amazing. And, you know, you also can get certified through the Grief Recovery Method,
Okay.
and they will train you. This, what I do is kind of, it's all from there. But you can actually get certified through them, and you can just be a grief counselor too, where it's easier. You don't have to get licensed. But, you know, if that's your calling and that's where God's leading you, it's another option. But thank you so much for sharing that. You know, can I ask, how long has it been since you lost your son?
And it's been 8 years. Well, I lost him in 2014.
2014. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Isn't that amazing that people would say you should be over it by now? That just floors
Mm.
me. Like,
Right.
how do you ever get over that, you know? And we'll talk a little bit about today, we're going to talk a little bit about completing loss. That's a phrase that they use a lot in the book, how to complete a relationship loss. And it doesn't mean that you forget anybody or that it doesn't affect you, but there is something to being able to complete the grief process. And that helps us get a little more unstuck. But to quote, be over it is amazing to me that people think that that's even possible. So
Right.
thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else want to talk? If not, I'll call on you. That's so mean, huh? All right.
Sorry, everybody. I am so sorry. I lost my internet for a minute. This is Linda Colbert, and I was hustling trying to get back connected to the class. Thought I was signing on a little bit earlier, but I lost the internet.
Well, welcome. We're glad you're
So
here.
I missed all of, a lot of what was going on. Just hearing Cheryl's testimony. That's about all I got so far.
Okay.
But Cheryl, that's an amazing testimony.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
Linda, can you tell us, were you able to get the book, and how did things go for you in terms of your process with homework, or tell us a little bit about you and why you're here?
Well, I'm here because I wanted to learn more about grief. I'm a licensed professional counselor, but I
Oh,
just don't feel adequate, that I have enough skills to work with people who are dealing with grief. And my understanding of grief is that it's not just about somebody dying, lost relationships, and as the book is talking about, divorces and any lost jobs or all kinds of losses that a person can experience. For me, it's most recently in 2017, I lost my mother. She passed away from cancer, but that whole entire process and the impact that it made on my families, and everybody's grief is so different and grieved differently for my mother. And being probably one of the oldest, just helping my siblings to process that grief and while dealing with my own. And so in terms of, I did get the book and I started reading it, but I haven't done my homework assignment yet. But
okay.
I'm looking forward to it. A lot of what I've read so far is very interesting, especially as it relates to the stages of grief, which is something that, we've been talking about for a long, long time, and discovering their take on the stages of grief. And I found that the piece about anger was interesting. Um, that's is that's about all. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail, but that's where I am.
Yeah. And you probably are familiar with the Kubler-Ross sort of definition of grief and the stages of grief. Yeah, they really shed a whole different light on on that thinking. And it's been extremely helpful for me as, you know, a licensed person. So I'm so glad you're with us. So you can hold my feet to the fire if I say something wrong.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to learn from you. That's my expectation.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you're here. I'd love to see your face sometime so I could see what you look like.
I'll show my face, but I can't do it tonight.
That's okay. That's all right. What about you, Ron? I see your name, but I don't know you. Tell us a little about you and if you got our book, okay? And tell me about what's going on with you.
Hello, everybody. I was in class last week with you all, and I signed up for this course because back in October 6th to be exact, my only daughter was tragically hit by a truck and died. And so I signed up for it so that because I know I need it. I've gotten better, even though it's only been a few months, but it's only by the grace of God. And so, and like Cheryl was speaking, and some others were speaking about grieving differently. You know, I've never had anyone tell me that I should get over it or I can get past it, and that's the good news because that's the last thing you want to hear at a moment like this. But I know that I need some counseling. I need to talk to other people who have experienced the same tragedy and hear from them. And so that's why I'm on board with just getting insight and more information, and it does help to talk about it. You know, it kind of helps. But when you don't have anyone around you that is experiencing the same type of loss, they don't understand, so they can't give some positive input, you know.
Right.
But I did get the book. I bought the last one from Half Price Books, last one they had, so it was meant for me to get it. And so I've read bits and pieces of it, and I did do the homework assignment, but I'm having trouble with my all-in-one fax machine.
Yeah.
Copier, you know, all in one. Having trouble connecting to the internet, so I'll be getting it to you as soon as I can get things up and running.
Okay.
But I'm glad to be a part of this course because I believe that it will help me. And like the book was saying about stages, I was thinking in the beginning that once you can go through one stage, then it's another stage, and it's another stage. But I've learned that the stages kind of like cycle themselves, depending on what you see. You know, if you see a picture or you have a thought, you know, some things trigger my emotions in a good way, and some things trigger them in a real bad way. And so when it's a real bad way, I just go ahead and cry it out, you know, and I lean on God. And then something will come up, a thought will come up, a memory, and it's in a good way. So sometimes I find myself crying and laughing at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought that was possible, but being a part of people who have lost a child, because it's not the same as losing a mother, a grandmother, or a child, because I've lost them in the past, you know, years in the 90s. But when it comes to a child, it's a total different ball game. So hearing the testimonies of those who have, it's inspiring and strengthening. So
How old was your daughter, Ron?
She was 27 years old. She was 27, and I was reading a book about anger. I never was angry, and never. I'm not angry towards the guy who did it. I know accidents happen, and I just thank God that I was able to have her around for 27 years. So that inspires me, because God didn't have to give it to me at all. But that's the way I view it,
Yeah, right.
But to have your only daughter, I mean, I have two other sons, and I'm sure people are probably saying, well, you got two more kids, but they won't approach me with that because the kind of person I am. I'm not a little guy, I'm pretty big, and I can get mean if I need to, and they know my past before Christ, so they won't do that one. But there's no replacing a child. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm enjoying the book. I'm not big on reading, but God has me doing more reading these days than I ever have. So,
Wow, Ron, thank you so much. I think all of our hearts are with you, right?
yes,
And
ma'am.
and we're there to hold you up and to just validate and hear your story and to honor and respect your process without any judgment or expectation or analysis, right? It's your story and we honor it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. You just being present has this sense, I mean, it's just like gold, right? You just being here, your presence. And yeah, wow.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
glad to be here.
All right. Okay, who else? Is it let me see, who haven't I called on? Somebody help me out. Who haven't I talked to yet? Do we have two Brendas? I think we do have two Brendas. Is there a second Brenda?
Yes, there's a second Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
Grace of Grace. Is that you?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
wasn't really prepared for the camera either, but
That's
oh well.
okay.
Here
Yay,
goes.
there she is. Beautiful. Talk to us. Why are you
Yes.
here and how is it going for you?
I am doing great. Susan and I visited yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday, and she invited me to this class and said it was really, really, really good. And so
she has to say that. She has to say that, right, Brenda?
Well, she even went beyond that.
Okay. We are related, in case some of you don't know. Susan and I
Oh,
are.
I didn't know that. No, I
Yes,
didn't.
our kids are married. Her son and our daughter.
Okay. Oh,
Anyway, that's okay.
yeah. I was just
Anyway.
thinking about her husband and SBHI. I always say that wrong. I always transpose those letters.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I told her, she said it was about grief. And I said, well, to be honest, I kind of shied away from that. I went through social work classes just a few years ago, and I worked at a memory care residential place for a year and was helped support the families as well as the office job. And it was tough. Yeah, I learned so much. I would not take for it. It helped with us as we were caregivers for my mother-in-law, but I don't want to be immersed in that. I don't want it to be everything about my life. I can't handle that. And so I have shied away from it, but she said it was so phenomenal that I thought, okay, Lord, I guess it's time. To step into a little bit of it. So that's why I'm here and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining and giving us a chance to kind of maybe help reframe some of your experiences. I think a lot of people shy away from grief or grief class or grief group because they think they're going to have to just rehash things, right? And which it's, if there's no way to complete something, then it does feel like it feels exhausting. So I'm going to help give people like a chance to help complete some of these feelings, so that there can be room for more of what God has for you. So that's sort of the process. That's why it's called the grief recovery method, because there's actually a method as we go on that you're going to
Okay.
implement. So I would challenge those of you who don't know yet what situation that you're going to grieve or loss or person, to kind of start thinking about what you want to be your subject matter in terms of what you've lost. And so we'll talk about that more tonight as we keep going, but yeah, awesome. Thank
I like that. At one point, my husband had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which he's been cleared of that. But at that point, I felt like it was a death sentence. And I visited I knew it would be a good one. It was a support group for families with dementia, especially, and I couldn't handle it. You know, some of them were telling about the things they were going through, and I wasn't there yet. You know, we weren't there yet with his health to that point. And so, yeah, it's like, no, especially I was working there at the memory care place too.
I love
Yeah.
that piece too, because you have to be aware of what your capacity is. Like, where are you at? What other things do you have going on in your life? What's your bandwidth, right? And there are some times in our life when it's just not as available as other times. So that's really good self-care to really be able to decide what's going on for you and, what your capacity is. That's very wise. So,
Well, thank you.
awesome. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay. So is it I can't read it. It's too small. Is it Cherie or Sharia? No. Okay. Not so much. How about, is it Kenva Bar? Are you with us? Hello?
Kimber she put a note that she is still at work, but she is listening.
Got it. Okay. Well, we're with you, and we'll check in with you guys later. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Did I miss anybody? Susan, we didn't talk to you. Tell us why you're here. I know, you didn't have much choice, but tell us a little bit about your process and kind of what you feel like you'd like to work on, or if there is any particular grieving subject.
Well, when you look at all of the losses and the different things, I've lost loved ones, my dad and my brother. And my brother when I was 17, my daddy when I was 33. And then 2 years ago during COVID, my mom. So I have those losses. We also moved from Africa where we were living. We moved from there, and then we moved to Houston, and now we've moved again. And there's just significant loss when you move, saying goodbye to those relationships. Many, you think, oh, we will continue to be close, but it's so difficult. So there was a big loss there. But also most recently, our youngest son went through a divorce that was really brutal. And that has caused a different level of loss and a different experience. So I'm sure everybody has tons of other areas of loss, but as it was going through all of that, and right now I have two friends that have messy divorce situations going on in their family, and they're reaching out to me for guidance and, you know, help. And so I want to take the class to help me, and I want to have words to say to others. And, you know, as we age, people look to us because they're going through experiences, and I want to have the right words to say, or the right way to help people. And especially these people, it just right now in my life, almost every close friend that I have, their child is going through something really messy. All
Yeah.
kinds of different things are happening. Our world is broken, and I want to be able to have words of life to give to them as they go through a process, and for myself as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think we all go through a lot of grieving when our children make choices that maybe aren't in their best interest. And as older, you know, parents and then older adults, we see like maybe where some of those choices might come back to be harmful to them, and yet they're going to make their own choices. And I think there is definitely a grieving process there, because not only do we grieve with them, but we grieve sometimes at the loss of a hope or a dream, right? We have a hope or a dream that our child will marry somebody that is a certain type of personality, or that they'll want children, or that, you know, I mean, there's so many different
Right.
variations of that. And as parents, I thought it'd be interesting to write a book one day about how parents sometimes feel a little betrayed by their children because of the belief systems that they adopt out there, you know, in the world, and they might not match our belief systems as parents. And that's a source of grief as well, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, I think that's a really valid point. The idea of moving and unresolved grief there, that's huge, especially for women, especially because their homes are a reflection of them and so much a part of them. And then when you move, it is definitely a loss. It's not just an adjustment, it's a loss in some respects. And so
Right.
all of those things are just as valid because they're your own experience. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about honoring each other's experiences. So
One
awesome.
more thing, just real quick, that hit me in this book is about children and the losses they have. And maybe it might be just a pet, not just, but a pet, or they move. And I have worked with children my whole life. And to be able to have the right words working with a child, words are so powerful. As a speech pathologist, I'm a speech pathologist. And so I work with words, and they're always tell the kids how powerful they are. But when they're going through a grief process of any kind, like Kimberly was talking about working with the kids, I mean, we just as adults have so much power in the words we speak to the children. And even for our grandchildren and children we're around, I just want to learn what to say and what not to say and what could be harmful. I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So wise. Well, the reality is if you're in this class and you're kind of wanting to learn this program, it's a pretty high probability that that there's a broken heart there, right? That someone has a broken heart, and it may have been caused, you know, by death. And the loss could have been the death of a person, or the death or loss of a hope, dream, or expectation. And I love how they talk about that in the material, because it perfectly conceptualizes grief. And kind of like what Ron was saying, like grief is really an interesting thing, because we have to learn how to hold the good with the ugly, right? It's like this really it's like this really complicated sort of ability to hold both. And so that's part of grief. And so I'm going to help you guys a little bit with how to organize that for yourselves. But grief can also be caused by the loss of a divorce, loss of a marriage, the breakup of a romantic relationship, or any other kinds of losses that there can be hundreds of types of losses, and they're as unique to the person that's suffering the loss as the loss itself. And so it could even be like the realization that maybe you're not living and you're not happy in your life. Maybe it's the loss of mental health, right? Where you realize that maybe you've had some kind of dysthymic depression or depression your entire life, such as in my case. Dysthymic depression is sort of like a low-grade depression that you have usually from trauma when you're small. And it just sort of hangs on, right? And so you don't realize that there's even something like that happening, that there's some kind of a challenge in terms of mental illness, either for yourself or your family. So it could even be that kind of loss or awareness. But regardless of your broken heart, it doesn't feel good, and it can feel a bit overwhelming and desperate. I'm not going to tell you how you feel. You already know how you feel. And I don't know how you feel. No matter how much I say, oh, I know how you feel, I don't, because your experience is yours alone, and there's no way I could know how you feel, and neither could anybody else. At best, I can connect with you in terms of what my losses felt like, and maybe be of some help when it comes to how I navigated some of those losses. But at the end of the day, nobody can, I guess, tell you that this is what loss is, and this is, and pretend to know how you might feel. Okay. People that suffer from loss, want healing. And typically, if you don't want healing, and if healing isn't important to you, then it's likely that maybe you're stuck in your grief. And it is even possible that grief sometimes can define you as a person, where we get so consumed with our grief that it becomes sort of our identity. And I have, that is a very real possibility. And so that's why we want to talk a lot about how to get through it and how to complete loss. So whether the grief is caused by a death or any other major loss, incomplete recovery has lifelong negative impacts on a person's capacity for happiness. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Incomplete recovery has a lifelong negative impact on a person's capacity for happiness. Why would that be? Because we only have so much emotional energy to go through our life. We only have so much an emotional energy to connect with our grandkids or our friends, or right. And if the grief part of our life becomes incomplete to the point where we can't think about other things, we can't function, we're kind of always in a fog, then you can see why it would have an impact on our ability to be happy. Does that make sense? So our class is going to help you complete your relationship to pain. It's going to help you complete your relationship to isolation and loneliness, as it's caused by the significant emotional loss of any kind. Okay. So recovery and completion are achieved by making small, deliberate choices. Okay. The choice to just even come to this class is a huge step forward and making a decision to process your grief differently and hopefully more effectively. Okay. Keep in mind that if you're grieving, that grievers don't need to be fixed. Right. As people are talking, right, it feels so tempting to, like, Ron, like, I just wanted to wrap my arms around you and give a great big hug. Right. So that's just a natural response to want to comfort, right? When you see that people are grieving. But the reality is they don't need for any of us to fix them. It's important to remember that we don't compare losses. And we don't compare our pain with another person's pain, right? So, like, I think, Ron, you talked about, like, it's different pain when you grieve the loss of your daughter as opposed to grieving the loss of, a grandparent that's maybe had 90 years of a full life, right? It's very different pain. And it's natural, I think, for us to kind of think, well, that's the loss of a marriage and that might be painful to them, but that doesn't even come close to what I'm experiencing. Right. And it's sort of natural, I think, as human beings to do that. And when we're grieving, our filters are down and we don't really have the ability to process the way we normally would. Right. I've noticed with a lot of people that are grieving is that obviously there's a lot of anger that gets mixed in. And when we're angry, we tend to lash out or we tend to get negative, right? At least I do. And because that colors the way I'm experiencing things on a day-to-day basis because I am grieving. And so it's just important to mention that every single person's loss is unique to them and that we don't compare our pain to somebody else's. And even though the losses are very different, each person's working through a grieving that's unique and personal to them and should be honored, right? The tendency, and I fall into this because of what I do for a living, is that grievers, they don't need to be analyzed, right? They don't need to be criticized or judged, right? I'll give a very personal example, as many of you will get to know me, but I had to go through a lot of grieving process because of the loss of my first marriage. And I'm very open. My story's out there in public, so I don't hesitate to share it with you all. But my ex-husband chose to go into a same-sex relationship and lifestyle, and he abandoned basically myself and our 5 children. And so he was the worship leader at a very large church in our area here in Southern California, and very talented and very well known. And so our situation became very public. And of course, I'm grieving because I had no idea that this was happening and that I was going to be in this situation. I was married for how long? 13 years. And so I suddenly found myself in a situation where I was sort of put on display, and my grief was very much on display. And I have to say that unfortunately, since he worked for a big church, there was a lot of people that were analyzing, criticizing, and judging my grief, right? And to the point where some people were even blaming me for what the choices my ex-husband had made. And it was so painful to me because not only did I not have a place that was safe to grieve, but I had to constantly be coming up against the judgments and the criticism of other people in my life. Either it wasn't a good enough reason to be grieving, or that somehow I was responsible for the loss. And so it's really important that we never compare, like you might have other people that are going through the loss of a marriage. And so it's natural to kind of feel like, well, when I went through that, this was my experience, right? As if I was the subject matter expert on that kind of loss. And it's very different for each person. And so being able to just give people a safe emotional space to go through their grieving process and honor it, I think is really important. So it's good to be reminded that grievers don't need to be fixed, right? And they don't need to be analyzed or criticized or judged. So what do they really need is to be listened to. They need to be listened to with dignity and with respect. And that's why I honor your guys's process and desire to even be here today, because you're obviously interested in how do I best honor and respect other people's pain, and what does that look like? What's the template for that? And that's what we're here for, which I just feel is so amazing. It's very sort of reparative for me to be with people, because I work a lot with secular people and people that aren't Christians. So to me, this is really reparative to even get to do this. I'm going to start to cry to do this with believers, because I feel like the church is waking up, and the church is, those of you out there that have a heart for this are wanting to do this and do it well. And I just think that is so cool, because that wasn't the case many years ago, at least in my own experience. So, what do you feel like people need as they grieve? Anybody have any thoughts? What do people need? Anyone?
I would think that they need presence and support, but not a lot of words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Presence is a big one, right? It's hard to just be present with someone when they are in pain. Yeah.
Yeah, life coaches, we call it holding space.
Yes.
Just being there with them and listening, and you validate their feelings and
Mm-hmm.
just allow them to talk out loud or not, but to know it's okay that somebody else cares.
Yes. And holding space that's safe enough for them to have an honesty about what they're going through and what they're feeling. I think providing a safe enough space where people can be brutally honest with how they feel is really important. So I'll go back to my own situation. I had been a Christian since I was 12 years old, fell in love with the Lord at 12 years old. I fell in love with worship. My prayer life was so vibrant. I knew God was real, more real than the chair that I was sitting in, even to this day. It was a very visceral experience for me to be in relationship with the Lord. And so, of course, I prayed for the right person to marry. I prayed that God would lead me to the right person. And I felt that he had. I felt there had been confirmation when I married this person, right? And he was a pastor, so I thought I just had the world by the tail, right? And so when I get this bomb dropped on me, literally, like an airplane could have landed in my living room and I would have been less surprised. Okay. So, I just share that with you because the total honesty piece was very difficult to wrap my emotion around, because I couldn't be angry with God. God was he sustained me through everything, but to have honest feelings about, God, why did you let this happen to me? Right. And I've been faithful to you. And I think a lot of you guys out there that struggle with a broken heart feel the same way. Right. God, why did you let this happen to my child? Why did you let, after all I've been through and now my health is failing? Like, why? And we are human. It's okay for us to ask those questions. But I think the point is that we need to be totally honest with our feelings, no matter what they are, to be able to walk through what's true for us. Without honesty, you can't complete a relationship because you have to have truth to prevail within your feelings. So total honesty is really important to access truth, and holding that space, kind of like what you're talking about, Brenda, like to hold that space and make it safe. People need to be able to say anything they need to say in any way they need to say it. Right? And so that is a difficult thing to do, and you have to practice it, because it's hard to sit with people who are really angry with God or
Yes.
whoever.
Yes.
It's very difficult because it comes against so much of what we, like how we process, right? And or if we grew up in a home where it wasn't okay to be angry ever,
Exactly. Those
right?
walls were supposed to be miles thick to keep you from ever being anything but just right. Yeah. Pleasant and good and nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in our, I always thought it was funny because my dad, he became a Christian later in life, but he was very reactive and yelled a lot and stuff. And I always thought it was really funny. I'm like, wait, how come you get to be angry, but it's not okay for me to be angry? This doesn't make sense.
This
Anyway.
doesn't add up.
but God was good, and he, and God saved him. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. But so being able to sit with people in their honesty and in their truth is a really important piece. And if you have your own stuff that make it difficult for people to do that, kind of like what we talked about, if it wasn't okay to ever be angry, and so you have this unspoken expectation that, oh, being angry is somehow not having enough faith or is not Christian or whatever, then you have to be very aware of that in your own heart and soul. In therapy world, we call that transference, right? So if somebody's angry in my office and I start getting agitated, like beneath the surface, and I start getting like, ooh, this is uncomfortable, that's my own stuff, right? That's transference. So just be very aware that the goal is for the griever to be able to have total honesty and to be able to complete whatever is true for them in terms of how they're feeling. Okay. Feelings are just feelings. They don't define you. They don't limit you. They're just feelings. But many of us have grown up feeling a shame on some level because we have a certain feeling. And so that's our own stuff to work out. Right. And keep in mind too, like for grievers, there might be details that in life that you're not willing to talk about or don't want to talk about, and that's okay, right? The importance is that we need to tell the emotional truth about an event or an experience. Okay? We need to be able to tell emotional truth about an event or an experience. Okay? Grievers need uniqueness and individuality, right? Since every relationship is totally unique, you need to honor each person's uniqueness and individuality, right? I'm going to respond differently to my pain and to my situation, as opposed to how somebody else is going to respond. Okay? No one else's opinion is important other than the griever himself or herself. Nobody's opinion matters except for the person who's grieving. Now, I have really good opinions, right? People come to me for my opinion about things. So I have to be very careful not to try to fix, because grievers don't need to be fixed, right? And I don't need to come up with solutions or opinions to make somebody else better. Their experience is what we want to focus on. Individual recovery hinges on each person's ability to communicate their own thoughts and feelings without interruption. Right? I had to really learn not to interrupt people because my brain goes way faster than my ability to even speak, or my, for sure, my ability to listen. So if you tend to be the type of person that is tempted to interrupt, that's okay. Just know that about yourself. And just know that that's something that you're going to really be mindful of when people are processing. It's really hard to be with people and allow there to be silence, right? You counselors out there, right? You know, it's really hard to just let there be some time where people are just being quiet and to not want to jump in and rescue. But silence is really, it can be a gift because you never know what's going to come next in terms of how somebody else processes. Right? So the thing that I think is that we need to kind of think about, and I'm going to give a chance for questions in a minute, is that unrealized feelings and emotions, we talked about this last week, right? It needs to be communicated for there to be a completion of a grieving situation or process. Okay, so undelivered or unrealized communication of feelings needs to be possible for a person to be able to complete their emotional process. So there's a whole lot of feelings that could be attached to things that are unsaid, right? Happiness, sadness, love, fear, anger, relief, compassion, those are just some of the feelings that somebody might experience. So it's important not to categorize them, but to just allow there to be a free-flowing sort of ability to communicate whatever somebody is feeling. Because like I talked about before, right? When kids have a hard time naming an emotion or talking about an emotional experience with themselves, they are unable to communicate. And the goal is to allow people to communicate in a way that's safe, but also in a way that gives them freedom to express however they're feeling. Were any of you guys able to get a feelings chart off the internet with all the different names of feelings? Yeah, okay, that's helpful. Sometimes I even go over that to help people talk about how they feel. And sometimes I don't name the feeling for them. Sometimes I will literally hand them the list. And that helps them too. So attaching feelings doesn't have to be histrionic or dramatic, right? People don't have to be in tears when they're communicating how they feel. We don't have to have expectations for people to react a certain way. It just needs to be sincere and heartfelt and honest for them. And sometimes I have to kind of, I don't know, I guess help challenge people a little bit when it comes to them communicating how they feel. Because if somebody is, say they're smiling and they're talking about a really painful experience, sometimes I'll stop them and I'll say, you know what, I notice that you have a smile on your face, but this sounds like it's really painful for you, right? And that kind of gives them the idea that, oh, I don't have to present a certain way for this to be a safe place. And that can kind of help promote some honesty as well for them. basically grief is just a natural response to loss. And rather than kind of, we talked about this earlier, defining the stages of grief, which sometimes can confuse somebody who's grieving, right? It's like, wait, what was that stage? Wait, am I done with that stage, or am I just entering that stage? Right? We prefer to help each griever find whatever expression of their own thoughts and feelings that they have, and that's keeping them from participating in their lives. And what that means is that if there are feelings that they don't choose to recognize or aren't accessing, it could be keeping them from being able to work through their own process. In other words, if we can go back to anger, if anger was never okay in my family, and yet I feel angry that I'm alone now with 5 kids and no way to support everybody, and I'm terrified, yeah, there's going to be anger there. But if I was taught that it was never okay to be angry, right, then you can see how that's going to be a barrier to me in being able to move through that process. That's probably the example. So what we want to do is help people own what's truthful and whatever their own expression is for them and their thoughts and feelings. A lot of people will go to a pastor and try to process grief, and that's hard because they feel the expectation from the Christian community that it's not okay to be angry, not trust God. I think grieving is harder sometimes in those communities because we have so many expectations, sometimes that we even put on ourselves, right? And so as the person working with somebody who's grieving, we have to work very hard to really pay attention to what they're feeling and see if there's a disconnect between what they're presenting and what they're saying, right? We all bring different and varying beliefs and beliefs to the losses that occur, right? We all have different belief systems. And therefore, we're each going to kind of perceive ourselves differently and perceive others differently when it comes to loss. And so I think just being highly aware that we each perceive situations differently. Again, it goes back to my own experience where people perceived how I should have responded differently. And so they each have their own opinion. I'm sure those of you, also have suffered loss. And I've heard some of you guys talk about, well, people think I should be over it already, right? Again, they are judging what your process is through their own experience. Typically, people who have that response, this is kind of what's going on in the background, and this will, I think, help you guys. People that love you, they want you to be okay, right? That's fair. They want you to be okay. Excuse me. And so their own way of handling their own angst or anxiety about your discomfort is to try to give you a goal, excuse me, or an expectation that isn't reasonable or even possible. In other words, their advice to you doesn't really have much to do about you. It's about them alleviating their own anxiety or worry about you. So it's coming from a place that they're attempting to caretake, but it's really about them reducing their own anxiety. Hopefully that makes sense. So when someone says to you, oh, well, I thought you'd be over it by now, right? They're not trying to be insensitive. They're trying to tell you, I feel so anxious that you're not going to be okay, that I was hoping you'd be over it by now. Because it's about their level of anxiety or discomfort watching you suffer. And I think as the person grieving, it's okay to say, my pain makes you really uncomfortable, doesn't it? Yes, it's so hard for me to watch you in so much pain, right? That gives you the opportunity to be able, as the person grieving, to say, you know what I really need is for you to just listen, or for you to not have any expectations that somehow I'm not doing this correctly. And I know you're not intending to hurt me, but I'm hoping that maybe there's a different way that you could support me. And then you tell them what you need, right? So we're going to end tonight with the last probably 15, 20 minutes with questions and any feedback that you guys have. This is your class. And so I want you to be, I want you to feel comfortable to just talk about whatever you need to. I do want to say one little thing before I turn it over to you guys, is that grievers tend to isolate. And what I mean by that is there could be times within the next, 10, I think this is week 2. So the next 8 weeks, that there could be an anniversary, there could be a birthday, there could be another triggering event for you that makes it so that you're not, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to come to class. You don't want to be around friends. You don't want to be around family, right? Because there can be lots of things that might trigger your loss. And so I want to just encourage you to email me and just give me a heads up on when there might be a triggering event for you. And I will keep that close. I won't advertise that, obviously, but I might call you and say, hey, I'd love to see you in class. And I know it's going to be tempting to want to just sort of bail. So because this process and having it be week to week is important, and in terms of your own healing, but I know isolation is very tempting. And so I just want to just put that out there. Okay. So, okay, give me information. Tell me any questions. Susan, are you fielding questions?
What do you mean? Am I fielding them? Like if
Yeah,
they
in
come
the
on?
chat. In the chat. Are there
Oh, okay, in the chat. Let me go over here.
chat? Or if anybody just has a question they want to ask is okay too.
I lost a brother in September, and he's so my sister-in-law is still alive, and so I really struggle with how to help her. It's or not help her but be there for her, and she's had a lot of loss in her family. Her children have died, and it's difficult for me. I hurt, but I hurt for her too. And I want to reach out to her, but I never feel like I know what to say or what to do. I called her the other day on one of her children's, would have been, birthdays. And she said, there had been several that morning that had called. And I called in the morning, but I was like, oh, I'm late. Or, I just felt I still feel so inadequate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we're all inadequate because we can't take away somebody's pain. And I don't think that we're meant to. I think the best way to work with somebody who's grieving is to ask them, what do you feel like you need today? What do you need today? Right? And not just assume that, like my mom, for example, we just lost my dad 2 years ago. And she told me, I need for you to not ask me how I am today.
Yeah.
That's the worst when people say, how are you doing? It's like, well, how do you expect, of course. And that is very hard to do, right? Because that's just a natural thing to say, oh, how are you today? Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought that was really brilliant for her to say that to me, because I thought, yeah, good for you for verbalizing. That's not helpful to me. Right. Yeah. So maybe just ask her, what do you need from me today? Right.
Okay. Thank you.
In the chat, Ron has written, silence is golden when listening to someone grieving.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think Brenda said something like that too about silence. Didn't you, Brenda?
It's a powerful tool. It's
Powerful tool,
it's
that's
like
for
a,
sure.
a very successful tool in coaching, because that's when the deep stuff happens. That person is allowed to go deep, and I'm okay with being silent, but because that's when they start going, oh, she's not letting me off the hook. I mean, I've been in the hot seat too, and it's like you just keep digging deeper and deeper in that silence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There was one thing I wanted to add about one thing that I found really helpful with the reading assignment is their definition of guilt. I found that relieving to myself, both here and there. So I think they say the dictionary definition of guilt implies intent to harm. And in my case, I found that it gave me relief, because even though I felt guilty, I wasn't leaving a situation with intent to harm them. I was trying to preserve my mind and my own heart, and then looking at the other end of the spectrum, at those who did harm me or hurt me, I was viewing it in a way of, I guess, maybe forgiveness or compassion, because I'm seeing that they didn't come at me like that with intent to harm.
Right.
So I was seeing it from both. So it was very helpful for me.
Yeah, I love how they bring out, like, think about that word guilt, right? Like, guilt is, we are either guilty or innocent in a court of law. And if we are guilty, we are punished, right? And how we use that word guilt so much to condemn ourselves for something we may have done. And there are so many other words that might more appropriately describe what it is that happened or what we're feeling, other than condemning ourselves to a guilty verdict. Yes, very powerful. Yes. And I love how you're thinking about it from the other perspective too, right? That somebody's intent to harm or didn't have an intent to harm, kind of helps us perceive maybe an offense differently too. Very powerful. Thanks, Ace. That's a great observation. Yeah.
Along with that quote that I'm sure we've all heard before by Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel bad about yourself without your permission.
Mhm.
So
Right.
talk to us about that, because I mean, it's so natural for us to feel bad about a
Yeah.
situation or whatever.
Now, are you talking about feeling bad in terms of that something has happened to someone and that you feel bad for them? Or are you talking about feeling bad like we're condemning ourselves?
Or more like, am I?
I lost you, Susan. I lost you. I can't hear you.
Now can you?
Yes.
More like what it was talking about responsibility, kind of going along with what Ace was saying.
Okay.
If I can make mom and dad feel something, then they can make me feel something. These feelings that you're having, that children have pushed down feelings, and parents have made them. That's what it was talking about here, about children. But just that feeling of any relationship,
Yes.
you can be made to feel bad, and you can accept that on yourself. You're right. It's my fault. My fault.
Right.
Those kind of things. How do you stop that?
Okay. So that's a great point. So that comes from being young and receiving a message and telling yourself something to help provide a sense of security and safety. Okay. So what that means is that when we're young, I'm 6 years old, and I get, I don't do something correctly. And so I'm told that I should do it differently. So what do I as a 6-year-old do? I could be prone to do, oh my goodness, mommy wouldn't be mad at me. And so maybe mom is unrealistically angry with me. Okay. Maybe it's not something that I should feel like I've done something wrong. Okay. So I've done something, it's something a normal 6-year-old would do, but mommy's super angry with me. Okay. The 6-year-old doesn't have the ability to think that mommy might be inappropriately angry. And so what the 6-year-old does is they turn it on themselves and say, it's my fault. If I didn't do A, B, C, or D, mommy wouldn't have gotten angry. And so I need to do better next time. Because a 6-year-old cannot look at an inappropriate parental behavior and say, well, that's really messed up. There's something wrong with the way they're acting, right? A 6-year-old can't do that because mommy, is in charge of housing, food, clothing, like the very, essence of our being depends on our ability to trust mom. So mom or dad can never be wrong or inappropriate when we're little, because it speaks too much to our very survival. So kids can't process that way. And so what do? We turn it in on ourselves and say, okay, it's my responsibility to make sure this person's emotions are okay and always regulated, and I'm always going to be safe. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then
Okay.
that person grows up to an adult and continues doing that. And then when a grief situation happens of any kind, they have stuffed those feelings down and they don't know how to express that.
Exactly. And so we have to, it's a matter of just being aware, if we're the person that's caregiving and helping, that we have a tendency to go to that place in us that's very young, that thinks we have any control over how somebody else feels. Because as adults, we know we have no control over how someone else feels, no control. Our behaviors can contribute to somebody else's experience, but we can't control how somebody else feels, ever. But the thought that we have that kind of power comes from a place in us that was just meant for us to try to cope the best we could when we were little. So I'm trying to cope to make sure that mommy's never upset or never depressed or never unhappy with me, so that I'm going to feel safe. I'm going to feel like I have a secure, and some kids are more sensitive than others, right? Some kids, mom can look at them a certain way and they'll fall apart, right? So it's a very sensitive, unique situation for each child and for each dynamic. So if you have a tendency to want to rescue or want to fix or want to be responsible for somebody else feeling better, then just know that that's probably coming from another place in you that feels less anxious, or it's hard to allow people to just feel their pain, especially if they're people that we're close to. It's hard. So just remember that the key is validate, right? Listen, I always say, listen with your heart, not with your head, right? If someone's explaining a dynamic or situation to you, listen to the emotion behind it. And you can pull the old therapist trick, right? Wow, it sounds like you are just heartbroken, or it sounds like you are really angry, or it sounds like, right? And then get clarification. Is that what you're feeling? Yes. And I can't believe that such and such and such and such, right? And then it just gives them more space, more room to be angry or whatever it is they're feeling. And wow, I'm with you. That sounds so hard. Validate, right? It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And I think Ron would agree, kind of what he was sharing, you know, just being present. You weep with people, you know, we weep with people. The first time I stepped into a therapist office after everything had happened in my life, I will never forget. It was the first therapist I ever saw. I was terrified to walk into the office because for me, it was never safe to have feelings. And so I literally felt like I had been kicked in the gut and I was going to just throw up. I mean, that's how scared I was to go into that kind of environment. And it's so funny because my clients will come in and I can see it on their face. And I'll ask them, do you just feel like someone kicked you in the stomach? And they're like, yes, how did you know? You know, so because I've been there, right? And so I feel like learning that that was a safe environment. And the only thing this therapist did, she wept. I told her my story and what was happening. She just cried. She didn't boohoo cry, but she sat like 5 feet away from me and her tears just rolled down her face. And that was 30 years ago. I will never forget that. I don't remember one thing she said, but that was so profound for me that I finally had a safe, compassionate place to work through my pain. So I think that's it for today, you guys. I'm sorry if I missed anybody or didn't get to talk to you guys. Please share next week. And I'll do the same thing next week. I'll talk to you guys and just ask you to check in, talk about the homework, and then anything you'd like to share. Maybe next week you guys can talk about what event you think you want to land on in terms of grieving. You have to pick one. And once you learn the process, you will be able to apply the method to other areas of grief for yourself. But pick one, okay? Because it's too overwhelming if you pick more than one, right? So pick one loss. And next week, we'll talk about which one you chose. And don't feel like you have to share if you don't want to disclose. We respect that. So I think that's about it. So. All right, you guys.
Thank you, Kathy. So good. So good. Thank you.
Good. Yay.
Very
Bless
much.
you guys.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Talk to you soon. See you
Thank you,
next.
ma'am.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
This was great.
Good.